What's up guys, Zenari here, and today I'm going to be doing a deck profile for Refiarade and Refiarade Rock. So I meant to post this a while ago, but now after testing it a bit and finding a deck that I like, I wanted to share my deck profile. And I think this deck is kind of sleeper, as in, yes, I know Prism is very good. It has a lot of the same value engine and you're able to draw a bunch of cards, but this deck has a lot of surprise factor and a higher ceiling compared to Prisms, but it's a little bit less consistent and doesn't net as much cards, but it has a lot of shield value. But anyway, let's just get started. Let's get through the core pieces. First off, we have our V-Series starter. So it has one simple ability: auto when roll upon draw a card. And it has an errata too, where if you're going second, basically if you're going second or your opponent has a grade 1 or greater Vanguard, you get a quick shield. So V-Series starter, nice. Get a nice +1, +2 if you're going second. Next, we're going to talk about the grade zeros. We have 8 critical triggers. Simple enough. Need that pressure. No extra draws are needed in the deck, so we're just running for 8 critical triggers altogether. Next, we have, of course, the staple 4 draw perfect guards. So this has the Sentinel ability. You can only have up to 4 in the deck. And Guardian Circle, when placed, discard a card from your hand and choose where your units cannot be hit to the end of battle. So draw perfect guards, pretty good. You don't need any grade 1 PGs. It just helps you survive. Nets you cards on defensives or offensive. Very good card. And lastly, this might be only me. However, I have a very valid reason as to why I'm running this heal trigger. I'm running 4 of the vanilla heal triggers. So as to why I'm running 4 of the vanilla heal triggers, the meta so far, I know that there are some decks like Amon, Maelstrom, or decks that require you to have 20k shield in your hand. So yes, the heal guards are good, and you do want them if your opponent has something like Valkyrion, the Dr. Valkyrion. However, most of the high roll decks like Melody, especially against Angel Federal of Hamiel, since Hamiel's gone, and some decks are now slowing down and they're printing cards to slow down these decks, or even just high roll decks like Overlord. I feel like you need the extra 5k shield to be able to survive against them, especially in this deck where you're able to just have a bunch of shield value for very low cost. Now, if you want, you can play 4 of the heal guardians too. It is up to you. I personally prefer running the vanilla heal triggers for that extra 5k shield, and even early game it's better than committing 2 cards sometimes, and card value is the name of the game with this deck. So now, since that's out of the way, we'll go on to the grade 1s. Of course, our grade 1 option slot, we're playing 4 Mermaid Idol Senna. So when this unit is placed on rear guard Vanguard circle, look at 5 cards from the top of your deck, build to 1 grade 3 from among them and put it to your hand, shuffle your deck. If you put a card to your hand, discard a card from your hand. Continuous Vanguard rear guard circle during your turn. If you have another unit in the same column as this unit gets filed as a power. I talked about this many times in the past. It's a good card that you want to call to search your right grade 3s. 13k beater or attacker, especially in this deck. Senna is a very good attacker since it's just a free 13k. Very good. You want as a 4 to be able to search your right grade 3s. Next, we're going to have 4 Faithful Lusara, Reliable Faith Luceros. So she has 2 abilities, continuous rear guard circle and guardian circle. If you have 2 more force markers, this unit gets 5,000 power and 5,000 shield. A continuous rear circle. If you have 3 or more force markers, this unit gets intercept and can intercept from the back row. So Luceros allows you to have a pretty good turn 3 as well, and if you're able to create 2 force markers, which most of the time you will be able to, you have now 4 extra 15k shields in your deck, so you're able to guard attacks for less cards in your hand. And with this, you're able to have a 13k attacker as well. If you get 3 or more force markers, if you use Silent Refiarade, you're able to instantly have this in the back row. So she's an attacker or a booster, and you're able to get immediate value from her on the rear guard circle. It's a very powerful combination with Refiarade, especially since you make a lot of force markers. And other cards in the future that create 2 force markers, you're able to actually have an additional 15k shield. So you gain an additional 20k shield in your deck from running her. And that's why I run her as a 4 of, but she's very important in this deck for surviving. Next, we run 3 equitable career Spiana. I know 3 is a weird number, but let me explain. Her ability is auto rigor circle. When placed, you may return a card with the same name as your grade 3 card on your Vanguard rigor circle for a drop to your deck. If you return a card to your deck, shuffle your deck and countercharge 1. 4 becomes a bit clunky because she is just an 8k, and she only becomes 18k if you hit a trigger or more. But Spiana is very important for you to be able to countercharge, and you can deck out in this deck if you are grinding against a slower deck in V Premium. She is still important in the deck, as in the whole Refiarade Rock and Refiarade combo costs 2 to 3 CB, sometimes even more if you're doing other stuff or have playing other cards in the deck. You need to be able to countercharge. So you at minimum run 3, at max run 4 if you really want to keep using Rock. So that's why we play 3 Spiana. And lastly, we play 2 best of best Isabella. So this was a card from the trial deck, a very early card for V series. So auto rear guard, 1 place, cost Sowas 2. Choose 2 of your other rear guards and they get 5,000 power until the end of turn. And if you have 5 or more rear guards, draw a card. So Isabella in this deck allows you to replace herself when she's called, but also she makes numbers. So for cards like Senna, or if you have Luceros on the field, they're 18k, on a force marker 28k, and 28k requires 20k shield, and that means your opponent has to commit 2 cards. They cannot use a 15k shield, and this is why I play vanilla heal triggers to stop 28ks and to be able to guard with 1 card. She can pump up your rear guards to hit better numbers and to pressure out cards in your opponent's hand. She is a 7k. You often do not ride her, but that's why I only play 2 of her. And the 5 rear guard condition is not hard at all, since you want to fill your board with Refiarade and to be able to attack as much as possible. So that's why you play 2 of her in the deck, and to be able to utilize that soul to be able to net cards and advantage. Now on to the grade 2s. The first staple in most Bermuda Triangle decks is Top Idol Aqua. So she has 2 abilities. When this unit is placed on Vanguard Rearguard, return up to one of your other normal units on RC to your hand. If you return a card, draw a card, and discard a card from your hand, this ability may only be used by a card with the same card name once a turn. A continuous Vanguard Rigor Circle. During a turn, if you have another unit in the same column as this unit, this unit gets 5,000 power. So same as Senna, she is a continuous 15k beater. Sorry if you can't see the power, but she's a continuous 15k beater. She's able to bounce back normal units, so you can reuse Spiana, you could get back Luzeros, you could get back other cards that you call to the field, and she's just a good early game card. There's not much to say. She's very, very staple in a lot of Bermuda Triangle builds, or even future builds. Next, we run another staple card in Bermuda Triangle. 3 Coco, Love Heart, Lizelot. So, her skills are continuous hand. It can be called as a grade 1. So if you're on your grade 1 turn, you can call her down, and you can activate her second ability, which is Auto Vanguard Rigor Circle, 1 placed. Look at the top card of your deck and call it to rearguard or put it into your soul. This ability may only be used by a card with the same card name once a turn. So I only run 3 in this deck because 4 is a bit too much. She's a nice number, as in you want to plus cards to the board, but also you don't want to be calling triggers, and you can deck yourself out in this deck, especially if you're going to get a more grindy deck like Luard or Prisms. You kind of need to not deck out and to be able to fuel cards back into your deck. But her being able to call cards early game, feeling cards for Isabella, it's very good, especially the early game calling Lizelot, and then riding Aqua to bounce her back to user again is very powerful. So that's what we run, 3 Lizelot. Finally, for the grade 2s, we are running Electric Essence Sissoko. So this card has 2 abilities: continuous rearguard circle, be returned. If any player's rearguard was returned to the hand this turn, this unit gets talents of power. And rearguard circle auto, 1 placed, you may put a normal unit from your drop zone on the bottom of your deck. If you put a grade 3 or greater unit, choose one of your opponent's rearguards, and that unit cannot stand during the opponent's next stand phase. So Sissoko allows you to prevent deck out. It allows you to return grade 3s that you don't want in your drop zone, or just normal units. Being able to return Luzeros to your deck if it's in a drop zone, shuffle, and then potentially reveal it from Refi. You're able to get more shield back. It's just a card to prevent you from decking out and to stay in the game a little bit longer. In a combination with Aqua during a Refiarade turn, she's a 20k beater. On a force marker, she's 30k, and since she hits over 28k, it requires a 2-card guard without the opponent hitting triggers. And you get more triggers, it just becomes harder and harder for them to commit cards to the guard circle from their hand. And this is why I play Sissoko in the deck, as well as having early game potential. If you don't need a certain card in your hand from Aqua, if you used her early, you can just put it back to the deck. And her stun ability is very useful against future rearguards in the future that have very powerful boost abilities, or just to make your opponent not to commit cards in their hand. Like I said, advantage in knowing how to control your opponent is the name of the game so far in V Premium. You need to be able to control your opponent. You need to be able to control the tempo of the game into your favor, and to be able to net as much advantage as possible to be able to win. So that's why we're playing 3 Sissoko. Now, before we get to the Refiarades, because I do want to explain a bit further since my last videos, we have a backup grade 3 in this deck to allow us to have a good grade 3 turn if you don't have Refiarade. If we play 3 Perfect Performance Anj. Now, this is not the main card you want to ride. This is just a backup option, or an ideal turn 3 card. So she only has 1 effect, Auto Vanguard Circle. When this unit attacks, count -1. Choose any number of normal units on any player's rearguards and return to hand. activate all effects according to the number of cards returned. 2 or more, this unit gets 10 as a power 10 in a turn. 3 or more, get a magic gift force. 4 or more, search your deck up to 1 unit card, call it to rear guard, and shuffle your deck. So Anj in his deck has mainly 3 rules, or 4. One, she's a backup ride. So if you do not have Refiarade in your hand at all, or if you have Rock in your hand, you do not want to ride Rock. Please do not ride Rock. You can ride her as a backup, as what she was intended to be. Second, she gets 2 force markers. She makes Luzros activate, but she's not full potential. So you shouldn't really call her to rearguard circle from her ability, or have her on rearguard circle after the second force marker. She's meant to be in hand. Third, you're able to return any normal units, of course, from Lieselot or any early game cards you called. And 4, you're able to start putting cards back into the deck with Cisco. So Cisco and Anj together, if you stack 2 force markers on the same circle, it's a minimum 40k attacker, especially if you're going first on turn 3. Your opponent will either have already used their heal guard to stop the multi-attack beforehand, or they'll use the -2 crit. It is up to the opponent. And Cisco with Anj, it gets over a heal guard with the ability to give 10k to the Vanguard's power, unless they hit a trigger on their defense. But it really depends on how the opponent plays out that turn. Mostly with Anj, I've used it to separate the markers and call Lieselot to get another attack. Now, yes, you can be stopped with a heal guardian with the 10k shield. However, you accelerate Silent Refiarade skill to be able to get instantly 5 checks the next turn. So for you already set up your board with Lieselot, so if you call the trigger, it's okay. You can always use it as an attacker if you don't want to commit that many cards. And you have Lieselot on the board, so you have a nice intercept. And Refiarade can start doing what she needs to do, as well as since Anj able to bounce back Senna, you're able to dig through deck more and other stuff like that. And even if you're still on Anj for a turn or something, you can still play the game, as in you just call Sistico or call Lieselot, but most likely you'll have your ideal ride or have Refiarade already in your hand. So that's where you play 3 of Perfect Performance Anj. And now on to the main card itself. We have 4 single quiet Refiarade. So she has 2 abilities. Act once a turn. Caramouse 1, discard a card from your hand and rest this unit. And perform all the following. If you have 4 or less force markers, get 2 imaginary gift force. Reveal the same number of cards from the top of your deck as the number of your rear guards with force markers, and put them into your hand, and activate all trigger effects of the reveal cards. Then the second ability is continuous Vanguard Circle. If your opponent's Vanguard is grade 3 or greater, all of your grade 2 or less units on your rear guard circle with force markers can attack from the back row. Now, as much as in the past I did not like this card, I've grown to like the card, as in it has some unique mind game tactics. Now, not always all the time where you get triggers, but you still can plus cards to your hand. That's why I say if you don't have Refiarade in your hand, this one specifically, Anj is still a good substitute, because if you ride into her, you can get her 5 drive checks, sort of. And Refiarade is a +5 on turn 4. That is very strong. And you check 5 cards, so you have the potential of getting 5 triggers or none. That's still very powerful, as you just counterblast 1 to add 5 cards in your hand, and you get 2 force markers. And most of the cards in this deck can hit at least 13. And that means, since most people are running Heal Guardians, if you can hit one trigger or you can pump their power to 28k, they're committing 2 or more cards for every attack. And that makes Refiarade a lot stronger than Prisms, as in most of your first attacks aren't that powerful. And she scales, well, she becomes more explosive the more triggers are in your deck. Your opponent can calculate how much you need to guard, but that's why the other new card, Refiarade Rock, exists. So, enough about Silent Refiarade. Let's talk about the main card of the deck. If we have 3 of Detonate Singer, Refiarade Rock. So, this card does have an errata, so I will not be saying the errata version. So, she has 2 abilities. Auto Hand. At the end of the battle, your rear guard attacked. If you have a Vanguard Refiarade in its card name, and a rest rear guard, and all of your circles with rest rear guards have a force marker, or have force markers. Cost, Counterboss 2, ride this unit as stand, rest all of your rear guards, and move all of your force markers to Vanguard Circle. And the second ability, Auto, at the end of your turn, remove all force markers from your VC. You get a magic gift force for every 2 markers removed. Now, Refiarade Rock is what she says. She's a Detonate Singer and it's very explosive. The cost of CV2 to be able to ride her from hand and move all of your force markers to the Vanguard Circle, CV2 is very heavy. However, there have been many games where my opponent does not know if I have Refiarade Rock in my hand. And that by itself can be threatening. Sure, against Protect decks, you can get guarded out from this attack. However, that's why you sit on Refiarade, the quiet one, to be able to multi-attack and plus more than them, depending on the deck you're fighting. Refiarade Rock, as a lot of people might think, yeah, it's not as good as what it could be, but in combination with Anj in this deck, you're able to have a turn 3 that can push your opponent. Even if it isn't the strongest turn 3, you can still push your opponent to 4 or 5 damage. Ideally, you want to push them to 4. And then each critical trigger that you reveal from Refiarade, you're able to put on your rearguard circle, pressure, and then you can swing with Refiarade Rock. Now, another thing I want to say about Refiarade Rock, there's 2 things. One, if you do happen to ride her, do not put it on Vanguard Circle. Do not put your force marker on Vanguard Circle, because her ability only specifies if you have all your force markers on your Vanguard Circle, you remove them. Do not put it on Vanguard Circle. Please do not put it on Vanguard Circle, because you will lose your only marker, and then you have nothing for Refiarade, or even Anj in that matter. Just put it on Rearguard Circle, and you can still do Refiarade Rock with just Rock on Vanguard Circle. I've done it a couple times where, yeah, I didn't have the Silent Refiarade, but I drove check Rock, and then I had my force marker on my Rearguard Circle, and I swung. Now, how this works, she checks to see if the rested rearguards that you have a force marker. If they're rested, that's cool. Now, if your other rearguards are standing, you can still use Refiarade Rock skill, because it checks to see if all of your rearguards that are rested have a force marker. And if they do not have a force marker, you cannot use the skill. So, let's say you just did the Refiarade and Refiarade Rock combo. You have 3 force markers after. Well, a minimum of 3. Because you gain 6. And then cut in half, it will be 3. You can put 1 in the back row, 1 in, and 2 in the front row. Now, your booster behind the one with auto marker, just leave it as rest. I'm gonna just leave it as stand. It's same as your Vanguard. Just leave it as stand, and then you can still use rock from your hand. And yeah, pretty much rock allows you to have that threatening Vanguard swing, even though it can still be PG'd. That's why most of the cards in this deck try to hit that magic 28k. As in a lot of cards, Bushiroad is printing more defensive options for a lot of clans, but hitting 28k when a lot of decks play the new heal guards, it commits them to have to call 2 or more cards. And into the future, we'll see how stronger Refiarade Rock and Refiarade will become. And with that being said, that is going to be all for this deck profile for Refiarade and Refiarade Rock. So I really enjoyed the deck. I can't wait to see if there's any more cards in the future that will help this deck have a little bit more pressure, or they'll even print more specific cards for her. However, I like the simple combination of these two cards. You can still play them in any deck. You can still have like 2 Refiarade Rock and maybe 2 of her. Dig for Refiarade Rock and still do your combo in other decks. Refiarade is also a very generic Vanguard to be able to accelerate force markers on turn 3 or even later. And Refiarade Rock just makes it so that you have more of a threatening pressure. It is a CB3 combination, but as long as you don't miscalculate, or your opponent somehow damage denies you or forces you to use your counterblast somehow, you should be fine with this deck. Now, with that in mind, I do want to apologize for bashing on this card so early on when it got revealed. By herself, yes, she wasn't as good, and she really didn't have like that win con like other decks have, or a supporting grade 3 or a supporting unit to help close the game. But simply with this deck, with both Refiarade and Refiarade Rock, you essentially get 7 drive checks. That is a lot of drive checks. You can hit heals, PGs, more defensive cards, and other cards you can use to survive your opponent's turn. Now, it might not be the strongest deck, but it is a fun deck. It is very budget. You can play whatever cards you want, basically. It is very cheap as well. So with that being said, if you like the video, like and subscribe. I will be doing more deck profiles, and I will be doing a guide soon on one of my favorite decks, but that'll be a long time in the making still. And with that being said, I'm Zenarion, and I'm signing off.